If you're going to install this lead gen engine into your business, then you need to understand how cold email works, because what happens for most people is that they run into this mountain I call the setup inertia. And the problem with cold email is that unless you scale the entire mountain, you can't launch. There's some things where you're like good enough, you could launch it. Cold email is not one of those things. You need to have like your ducks in a row. And unless all these ducks are in a row, you're wasting your time and the launch will go to waste. The goal of this video is to help you overcome that setup inertia by giving you a lay of the land. So let me show you how cold emails work. In essence, what are you trying to do? You're trying to send, let's say, 1,000 emails a day, right? So if you're trying to send 1,000 emails a day, the biggest problem is if Google or Outlook or one of these email service providers is going to tag you as a spammer. Because if they tag you as a spammer, your emails go directly to the spam folder. And how often have you checked your spam folder? Probably never, right? You check it like once a year. If that happens to your cold emails, it's not going to work. Like you're wasting your time, you're wasting your money, and it's just like you're just wasting effort. So the number one issue in cold email is deliverability. Can you get into somebody's main inbox where they see their regular emails? If you can figure out how to do the setup to do that, then you're golden. So let's say I wanted to send 1,000 emails a day. Well, I can't just link it to my primary domain and start blasting 1,000 people. In fact, if I do that, I will damage the reputation of my primary domain, right? Of my company domain. That's a big no-no. Don't do that. Don't ever send cold emails from your primary inbox of your company. What you want to do instead is create a bunch of secondary domains. So for example, if your company is named example.com, then you want to create secondary domains like tryexample.com or appexample.com or techexample.com. And out of each of these secondary domains, you can probably send about 100 emails per day on each of these domains. So what we do is that we typically create 20 or so of these. And then from each of these domains, we link 2 inboxes. So an inbox is basically like an email address. Like example would be like john@tryexample.com, and an alternate one would be like johndoe@tryexample.com. Now it's the same person and it's all going to still send out. The whole point of doing this is just so that if this inbox gets flagged as spam, maybe this one is like protected. Now, typically, if this one gets flagged as spam, it could just be like a one-off that this one gets flagged as spam and it might not impact your domain. But sometimes it might impact your domain if like they notice that this one is a spammer, this one's a spammer, and then that domain is dead in the water. And I would say that every single cold email domain has a lifespan, right? It depends on how well you do the setup. And some of that will depend on how you configure your DNS settings. Some of that will depend on how well you write your cold emails to get replies. Some of that will depend on spin tags that you use within the cold emails, how personalized they are, how different each email is from one another, the quality of the lead list. So whether you clean that list or not, because for example, like if you're emailing somebody and you get a bunch of bounced emails, that's a trigger to the server that basically you're spamming, right? Because you don't really know these people's email addresses. And so you got to clean your list. There's a lot of factors that go into that. Before you can even get started, there's something that you need to do, which is once you create a bunch of these domains and create a bunch of these inboxes, you can't just start blasting 1,000 emails a day right away. It's just like Google or Outlook will tell you or flag you immediately as a spammer. So you need to first, when you create a new inbox, you need to warm it up, right? And what that means is that you need to link it to one of these sending software platforms. We have one that we use. If you want the checklist and you want to see how we do it, just keep watching the videos. But essentially what these sending platforms do is they automatically start mimicking a real person. Once you link the inbox to the sender, it'll start shooting out emails and replying to emails. Now, these are like fake emails, right? Meaning like it has a bunch of accounts that it shoots out emails from to your inbox and then replies from your inbox to those email addresses. But what it's doing is mimicking a real person. And the whole goal of that is Google or Outlook doesn't flag you as a spammer. So they're like, okay, when we look at this inbox, it looks like a real person is responding. It looks like a real person is receiving emails. Yes, it's new, but it seems like it's mirroring a legitimate inbox. And that's what you want in that warming period. Now, it will take at least 14 days to do that warming. And some people are now saying it should take at least 30. That's a practice thing. Like if you set it up, if you run it for 14 days and then you see your deliverability is not that strong, then you might need to back off on the campaign and then like let it warm up for a little bit more. But again, that warming period, the whole goal is so that you mimic a real person, they don't put you in spam, okay? Because if you set up an inbox today and then you start blasting 50 emails a day from it, you'll get tagged as a spam. Now, after that warming period, you should be able to send up to 50 a day, from each inbox. So from each domain, you should be able to send like about 100. I personally do not go close to that 50 a day number. I try to keep it, in the 40s or high 30s. And that's because I want to continue warming the emails because again, I want to mimic a real response. So for example, if I start blasting cold emails out and then I'm not receiving back a whole lot through the warming process, then it's like irregular inbox activity. So I want to keep that warming going where I'm receiving emails regularly as if it's a real inbox. Again, my metrics doesn't look like a cold emailer. That's why I don't send out 50 per day per inbox, but that's a theoretical limit that you could do and still land in the inbox. Now, when you send out emails, there's a couple things that you got to keep in mind. Number one is on the initial email, you can't include links. You can't include, long text and all these things. It's just short and to the point because the whole goal of the first sequence is just to get a reply. The moment you get a reply, number one, that is a positive on your email inbox reputation, right? It's telling the servers oh, this is a legitimate person because people are replying to them. So you want that. So the way we do that typically is we try to get people to give one word replies. We set up the email, honestly, 1 to 2 sentences with the subject line of 3 words, a first line that is relevant to them and calls them out, and on a question where they can just be reply yes if you want to learn more or something like that. Or reply yes if you want our lead magnet whatever the offer is. So that is something that you want to make sure you do because if you don't get a reply, again, what are you doing? You're hurting your deliverability score over time by showing that people aren't responding to your emails. So this is likely a cold emailer, cold spammer, not a real inbox. So moving on. The last thing I would say is as part of your email is that there's 2 non-negotiable parts of your email when you write them. And that is the first part is your signature. You cannot exclude your address, your physical mailing address from your cold email. You need to have a physical mailing address on there. It's required by law. The second thing that's required by law is that you need to opt out. You need an opt-out line. Right? So this could be an email unsubscribe link. I don't recommend those because again, they hurt deliverability. But what we typically do is an email unsubscribe line. So they reply and we automate that no, and we take that and then we put them on a block list, right? Where people are they're removed from being contacted again. Again, if you don't do this, you won't be in compliance with the law. And I probably should say this, right? Because the goal here is not to spam people. Goodness gracious, if you cannot help people, please do not promote anything. Don't be spamming people if you can't actually help them. There's only one way to do it with integrity. Number one, have an offer that you can actually help people with. And number 2, when you send the emails, position that offer so that they can see, oh, I have this problem and this guy has a solution. And then the last thing I would say is lead with value, right? What that means is this is the first date. This is the first time they've ever heard with you. You have to give them solutions to their problems, to their pain. You have to help them first before you're asking. So if you're able to do that and you're able to engineer a simple first email that gets a reply, then your next step is to get them into your funnel. So if they reply that they're interested, you could send them to your landing page, you can book a call, you can take them wherever you want from there. But let's say they don't reply. Then what we typically do is we send follow-up sequences. And so those follow-up sequences are essentially 2-liners, just, bumping that original email or providing additional value within the follow-ups that might be relevant to them. You can follow up as many times as you want, but the truth is you want to have a balance between being respectful of people's inbox and providing enough opportunities for them to engage with you. So a good recommendation there is 5 to 6 times follow up, maybe 7. But on the last one, just tell them hey, I won't be contacting you again. And that way they don't report you to spam because you indefinitely following up with them 24/7. And another thing you can do is just automate the space, right? So you can follow up every 3 days or 2 days and give it some time to marinate. That's the way that I look at the sending. Now, there is one thing, I don't know if I covered this fully, but there are some technical configurations that you'll have to do with your DNS. So your domain, once you register your domain, there's some DNS settings that you have to configure to give yourself the best chance of being delivered into the inbox. And so throughout this mini course that we're doing here on the channel, I'll walk you through some of those configurations. In fact, we'll take a new business and set it up from scratch, from offer all the way through fully launched product, and show you how we do it end to end. If you're interested in that, just continue watching and we'll see you on the next video.